morning, everyone. I think we can start on time. Normally this is quite on time. 9:31 is still on time, right? So it's Monday. Thailand. Most of people in Thailand are on vacation, but not us. So let's take it easy. But let's see how productive we can have this workshop this morning and then this afternoon. I think most of you are directly involved in the standing committee this afternoon, right? So standing committee is a reason why we're having so many capacity building workshop in the morning, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday this week, right? I think most of us know each other quite a bit. I met a few new people. But I'm happy to see all of you. Many of you, I think, we saw each other online over the past 2 or 3 years, but not physically. I think it's a new thing, right? So I think it's good that we're going back to physical meetings. Although we have quite a number of speakers, I think, that are still going to be online with us, right? So hybrid, we're making the most of the hybrid format this time around. I'm Yann Duval. I'm the Chief of Trade Policy and Facilitation at ESCAP. This week is an important week because, as I mentioned, we have the first implementation meeting of the framework agreement on facilitation of cross-border paperless trade in Asia and the Pacific this afternoon. So we'll be talking about this more this afternoon. But one thing I wanted to flag is that, you know, at the end of the day, the treaty is all about capacity building and enabling cooperation among all the countries, right? It's something that is very difficult to do. Cooperation among the countries on trade facilitation, especially if you start talking about not unilateral implementation of trade facilitation measures, but actually electronic exchange of trade data and documents among countries, right? This is the tricky part, right? If you look at the WTO trade facilitation agreement, most of the measures, they are basically unilateral. So you can implement almost all of it without talking to anyone. Except obviously the customs to customs part, right? But here, what we are interested to do in this region, and then all together, right, is to do cross-border cooperation, cross-border paperless trade. And for this, we need to talk together. We need to share information as much as possible, and we need to build capacity because there is no ready-made solutions for any of that. Unfortunately, there is some international standards that exist, and we'll be hearing about those. But beside that, you know, in fact, there are too many international standards. So which one do we need to pick, and how do we implement them? Because picking international standards and actually implementing it is also a different story. There's legal issues, there are technical issues to be addressed. So this today, I believe, is going to be more technical side, and I think we have a more legal workshop. Is it Wednesday? Wednesday, right? On Wednesday, in collaboration with UN Citral, and Luca Castellani, our good friend, is here as well. I don't know how many other lawyers we have with us. I think for today, I think Brian is here. Oh, Brian is here. Okay, so we've got 2 legal experts, and most of the others are more technical experts, right? So we'll give them a voice to make sure that the legal issues are not forgotten. All right. So you're very welcome to this capacity building workshop on implementing cross-border paperless trade and emerging technologies. Presentation and discussion in the workshop will provide insights into the utilization of emerging technologies for cross-border paperless trade, such as distributed ledger technology, blockchain, the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, and data analytics. And I'm very pleased in particular to have IBM, right? Shantanu is here, right? Okay, to have IBM Shantanu is here because it can give us the latest on the IBM Maersk joint initiative related to blockchain and logistics. Everybody is talking about how this is going, or actually not going anymore. So I think that's going to be an interesting discussion. There are significant benefits of cross-border paperless trade digitalization, including utilization of emerging technologies. Trade cost can be greatly reduced. The latest report we have on this indicate that further accelerating digital trade facilitation implementation could cut average trade costs in the region by more than 13%. This is a joint report we did with Asian Development Bank. If you look at some of the report by the International Chamber of Commerce, focusing more on trade finance, actually they come up with even much bigger numbers than us. So actually we are, our numbers are very reasonable. But it's possibly much higher benefit than this. Trade digitization has been proven as an effective means to reduce physical contacts also during COVID-19. So in terms of building resilience of supply chain and so there is a lot of benefits. Emerging technologies for international trade have the potential to accelerate and intensify these benefits, the benefits from trade digitalization, but it needs to be adopted with cautions. And then we have Teng Fei Wang here with now the new lead at ESCAP on paperless trade, who's written a nice blog on how cautious you have to be in adopting new emerging technologies. If you haven't read his blog, you can take a look. That doesn't mean you should not do it, but you should do it cautiously, right? So for those of you who don't know him, Teng Fei is a new figure of paperless trade at ESCAP. So please make sure you meet with him, and then you'll be dealing with him in the next 2 or 3 days. As a basis for trade digitalization to materialize, it needs strong political will, as well as active cooperation between agencies, countries and sectors and stakeholders at bilateral, regional and global level. Furthermore, for emerging technologies, there are further considerations, including maturity level, economies of scale and interoperability issues. The recent news on the discontinuation of trade lanes, so this is why I was calling on our IBM colleagues, took many of us by surprise, but it accentuates that more efforts needs to be put into materializing the benefits that the emerging technologies could bring. It also needs to be accompanied by legal and regulatory reform to support the utilization and compliance of these new services and products. Still, it is clear that emerging technologies will continue to proliferate and with great potentials to enhance international trade procedures. So as you know, ESCAP has quite a number of initiatives in this regard, right? The first one is the framework agreement. So I will not talk again about it because we will be discussing at length and most of you are very much aware about it. The second, one of the other initiative, which is actually directly related to the negotiation and the implementation of the framework agreement, is a new database developed by ESCAP with the International Chamber of Commerce. It's called the Cross-Border Paperless Trade Database, not a very original name. But what is nice about this database is that it brings together, it's a repository of, or it intends to be, a repository of all the cross-border paperless trade projects that are going on around the world, around the region and around the world. And so one thing we found during the negotiation of the treaty and during the drafting of all the documents, everything, is that it's very difficult to find out, what is exactly going on in terms of cross-border paperless trade. Which country is exchanging which document with another one? Is it on a pilot basis, an ongoing basis? Is it still ongoing, or is it already a dead project? And it's not only government to government exchange of documents, right? It's also private sector is also very active in this area. So the purpose of this database is really to bring all of this together. And so it's already online. We launched it actually at the Asia Pacific Trade Facilitation Forum in Singapore on 1st of September, if I remember correctly. And so you're all encouraged to take a look at this database and see maybe also if your countries are already engaging in some of those cross-border paperless trade data exchange, see whether it's already in the database. If it's not in the database, I mean, let us know, and then we'll add it, right? The address of the database is digitalizedtrade.org, right? So it's very easy, digitalizedtrade.org, and then we will be circulating it and maybe probably talking about it a bit more during the coming weeks. During the coming days, actually, this week. All right, so on this note, let me stop here and wish you a very successful workshop. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jan. So let me add my thanks to all the participants as well as the speakers. So my name is Sue Kim. I'm part of the Trade Policy and Facilitation section in ESCAP. I think most of you have heard my name either through emails or we met physically before. But we do have a number of speakers for this program today. And as Jan has rightfully spelled out, the emerging technologies, it would not disappear, but we have to really treat it with caution, and the political will as well as political implication, policy implication needs to be taken into account. So we try to bring in the experts and the country experiences as much as we can do with a balanced view. So let me start with a number of speakers from the international organizations to give us a little bit of like food for thoughts about the challenges and opportunities that the emerging technologies can bring. So let me introduce Mr. William Gain, or many of you would know him as Bill. He's the Global Product Specialist for Trade Facilitation, Macroeconomics, Trade and Investment at World Bank Group. So Bill is joining us from, I believe, from Australia online. So Bill, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sue. And good morning to everybody. Yeah, I'm currently on mission in Australia, where we have a Pacific focused workshop this week. So nice to see you all again. I will present just a little bit around, the concepts you've outlined, both Sue and Jan, and kind of, where we see opportunities and challenges. And as Jan indicated, it's the first bit is easy, the implementation and identification and impact. Sustainability is kind of where it gets difficult. So let me try and share my screen. Let me try that. Okay, and I'll just bring it up. Okay, Sue, can you see my presentation?
You want to share?
Yeah, I've shared it. I'm just wondering whether it's showing or not. Let me just check. Is it showing? Maybe not.
Not yet. Give me 1 second.
All right, let me try again. Let me go back. Okay, share. Okay, click again. There we go. You should be seeing it now. Can you see it?
Yes, it's coming up, but it's not full screen. Yeah.
Okay, full screen's coming. Yeah, it seems to be like 10-second delay. So there we go. All right.
Yeah, we can see it clear.
Okay.
Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, Sue. So yeah, it's, I guess, thinking about, what does it mean? What does digitization mean and digitalization and around cross-border trade? There isn't exactly one definition, although I know that in the work that you've done around the, your convention, you've kind of tried to look at what a definition might be in terms of cross-border paperless trade. But the OECD also have a definition which includes, digitally enabled transactions of trading goods and services can be delivered either digitally or physically. I kind of think it's quite nice because in many, particularly LDCs, the digitization actually includes not only services coming across physically, but actually the physical documents as well, which is obviously something that needs to be eliminated over time. So that's the second bullet there. Trade processes and procedures can be digitized and automated, but eliminating the paper and reducing the time and cost for traders, and particularly SMEs and women-owned, led and managed firms, is going to be a critical kind of focus that needs to inform, I think, the way that projects and initiatives are designed. And must include, of course, all multiple stakeholders, consumers, firms, and obviously governments and regulators. Advanced technologies, have begun obviously to automate the global supply chain. And in some ways, it's, during COVID, it's obviously come to a point where the supply chains are not being functioning overly efficiently for a whole range of reasons. But the engine that drives, this whole e-commerce thing is all about digitization. And, it's really important to think about it in at least 3 or 4 buckets. And Jan mentioned the buckets, the same ones that I'm about to mention: blockchain, Internet of Things, big data, data analytics, AI, and machine learning. So, bringing all those things together in a matrix that makes sense for a particular country and a particular region or a particular cross-border, parts of different countries where it kind of makes sense. And of course, these supporting enabling technologies that need to be in place. It's all very well to digitize and automate, but if you don't have a back office system, perhaps cloud computing and the like, it just, you can't digitize or automate. And, I think this is where, the UNCTAD, as a CUDA system kind of, is a platform for many LDCs to begin the digitization kind of journey within customs. But then what is more important is to take the leadership from within customs and the ESCAP system, to the other government agencies, and ensuring that the automation and digitization kind of happens from that whole of government approach. So what exactly is covered? What are we talking? Are we just talking about e-commerce? Are we just talking about express? No, it's much bigger than that. But certainly, e-commerce is what we're seeing growing rapidly, particularly over the last few years, given the COVID situation and movement of parcels and packets. However, this digitized trade does revolve around the movement of data, and also commodities, because you can't have cross-border trade without actually, goods and services. But if we just think about goods, it's a physical movement, But often this kind of has to be through the GVCs, which need to kind of often in third countries and need to kind of be the engine of that cross-border digitized trade, particularly where there's a multitude of actors within the supply chain across different regions to manufacture and deliver a cross-border trade. But where digitized trade will really gain momentum, and where we see the huge gains already for countries and SMEs particularly, is not only digitizing the movement, but the information for traders, particularly women, as I mentioned earlier, owned, led or managed SME firms. And so integrating, the trade information portals, and obviously the World Bank has a kind of a solution for that, as does the United Nations, so through UNCTAD. And both, provide that integration into the digitization of trade information and into the cross-border trade through single windows and automated solutions. However, what I really want to emphasize is, data harmonization must be based on international standards, and this is key. And the Paperless Trade Convention that you're launching and implementing, is a consistent standard of operations, particularly in this region, but certainly leverages into the worldwide models, through the International Standards Organization, the World Customs Organization, the UNECE data models, the WCO data model, and of course, some of the new recommendations that we've seen come out of UNECE, like Recommendation 38, which is the recommendation and standard for trade information portals. And of course, aligned to, the WTO agreements, particularly TBT, and of course, SBS, and most lately, the Trade Facilitation Agreement. But, where to, really? Where to next, A move towards a digitized supply chain is obviously going to be key, around those 3 or 4 buckets that we talked about. And it will be the data-based technologies. Now, there might be a few we've not even thought about or seen yet, but that same concept will drive innovation, and we see a lot of that, in the private sector, innovation around digitization and particularly automation, cars, drones, and the like. And I'm glad, Jan, you mentioned the kind of the legal aspects around some of that, because, it's particularly complex, particularly, cross-border movement of drones with packages. And these things are going to, I think, come to, to fruition in the coming years. However, technology is great, but the human element in decision-making is still a critical and a key piece to ensure that risks are managed in a sensible way. So having thought about it in that regard, there's plenty of opportunities, particularly for countries to digitize. and enable paperless trade, remote connections, focusing on inclusiveness, particularly for women-led owned and managed firms, and allowing traders to interact from wherever they may be, either on the way to the border, at the border, in their homes, etc. But it does require investment in three major dimensions. A whole of government approach, I kind of alluded to earlier. It's not just about customs. It's got to be about all of the border agencies, standards, biosecurity, particularly SPS agencies, food safety, etc. And then the sharing of information across regulatory agencies. So getting that right before you start to share and exchange information, both bilaterally and regionally, and we hope globally. Unfortunately, some of that trans-lens kind of data didn't kind of eventuate in the way that we thought it would. So again, it'd be very interesting to hear that discussion a little bit later this week. And of course, support for developing countries and LDCs, and particularly the other government agencies and standards and SPS agencies to commence and maintain that journey of digitization, where sequencing is absolutely critical to ensure you get that outcome around the digitization and those metrics that we just heard about from Jan, to be realized, particularly, for LDCs. Challenges, though, as Jan indicated, there's lots of challenges: legal, implementation, capacity, etc. So having access to some of that information is really going to be useful to guide some of the international organizations and regional organizations, as they begin to design and implement support activities, for the implementation of paperless trade. So ensuring digitization of all processes and the elimination of those manual processes, which we still see in many countries sitting alongside automation. So that's kind of got to be, still a challenge, but it's got to be a key kind of design component of paperless trade. And we look at the journey from, mostly manual to a fully paperless solution, like a national single window, e-FIDO, e-conformity assessment, etc. Change management is going to be one of the most critical capacity building activities that needs to be built in, along with the sequencing of activities. And finally, it's important to ensure alignment across the supply chain, as we often see in developing countries and small island states, like in the Pacific, where I am at the moment. There is a lack of e-payment solutions that really work and are affordable for SMEs to embrace the digitalization of processes, the e-commerce environment, the internet, ordering and receiving, and along with, the last mile kind of issues around e-commerce. So that alignment is going to be key to kind of like bring all of those processes together and all of those benefits and opportunities, and remove some of the constraints and challenges. Thank you. That concludes my presentation. Very happy to extend and deepen the discussion that I may have started, and answer any questions, of course. Thank you. Thank you, Sue. Back to you. I'll just try and stop sharing this.
Thank you very much, Bill. Due to time restraints, I would suggest that we will take questions and answers at the end of all presentations. So I'll move to the next speaker, who is Mr. Christian Lemke, Technical Attaché of World Customs Organization. So he's here with us physically.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. Can you share my presentation? I think it should be up now. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here from Bangkok. It's much warmer here than compared to Brussels. I would like to share some insights from the disruptive study report on disruptive technologies we published with the WTO. So it's from a customs perspective. Given to the time, I will do it quite briefly. So we have published the first version of study report on disruptive technologies in June 2019. The objective is to raise awareness of the latest technologies and their potentials, provide practical example and use cases, and to acknowledge the importance of exploring new and emerging trends for successful policy making and address enhanced interests of the membership in what we commonly call disruptive or also emerging technologies. So we decided to work together with the WTO on updating the study report on disruptive technologies in order to reflect the latest developments, including the results of the WTO 2021 annual survey, which we did among our members, and lessons learned and recommendations stemming from the round of 4 regional online experience sharing workshops since March 2021, as well as update and new cases. In total, we have 42 cases provided by members and other stakeholders. So the study report focused on 11 technologies: blockchain, IoT, AI, and machine learning, biometrics, drones, virtual, augmented and mixed reality, and 3D printing. Relevant for paperless trade is in particular blockchain technology, data analytics, and Internet of Things. But I will focus on the blockchain technology and data analytics. So one specific use case for customs when it comes to blockchain technology can be the customs declaration. You can imagine the creation of a customs declaration is a very complex task involving various activities, and they are challenging in the collation of this information, which happens often manually from various documents, various stakeholders, such as sales data, product information, manufacturer details, logistical information, owing by different sources in the supply chain. The blockchain can help to collect all the information required from ordering, preparing, shipping the product in a common ledger. Ideally, this would require trade documents to be used in electronic format and different stakeholders in the supply chain to be part of a blockchain, allowing for provision of information from the most reliable sources. Customs could automatically put this information from the blockchain to put together the customs declaration. Based on the annual survey, we have the information that blockchain technology is still in experimental phase for customs. Around a third of customs authorities who respond to the survey testing it through proofs of concepts and pilot projects. And for this, they use mainly private permissioned blockchains. Only 2 customs administrations have reported a full deployment of this technology, and 26 customs authorities plans for this technology in the next 3 years, while 45 have indicated that they have no plans. And you can see in the graphic also the based on the region, categorized in the region we have. We also asked our members for the main, what do they see are the main benefits of the blockchain technology. Members have expressed their hope that the use of blockchain will allow better transparency, immutability, and accessibility of information, and increase data quality, as well as the sharing of relevant information on border management procedures among all stakeholders. We also asked about the main obstacles, so a lack of expertise, good practices, as well as associated costs are currently posing the biggest challenge to its introduction. Other reasons that could hinder the success of its full deployment could be lack of standardized data sets used by government agency and economic operators, lack of efficient governance system, and the potential for the use of different blockchain solutions that are not interconnected with each other. Here you can see in which areas in the proof of concepts the blockchain technology is implemented. So we have information exchange, interoperability at national and international levels, the development of international single window interconnectivity, ensuring properization of certificates such as certificates of origin, information sharing on AEOs within the e-commerce environment, and the access to logistical tracking information. So I will skip this. You can see, given to the time, you can see the use cases in the study report. There are two examples in the presentation, but there are more use cases in the study report. So when we talk about blockchain and its use of trade facilitation, I should also point out the recent announcement from Maersk. So it's not all is good. It's in a joint venture with IBM, Maersk has developed what it's probably the most ambitious private permission blockchain for the exchange of supply chain information, namely trade lanes. And also some of our members were connected to this platform. TradeLens says it has proceeded so far 17 million containers. However, 2 weeks ago, Maersk had announced that they will discontinue the platform due to a lack of customer or partner demand. This news has caused quite a stir, as it shows that despite the efforts of two major players, the objective of a seamless exchange of information is difficult to achieve. According to some experts, this could be due to the competitive situation between the numerous stakeholders of the supply chain, in which interconnectivity is not always in the interest of individual. Other questions, whether blockchain technology was too much in the foreground and the objective could have been achieved maybe also without the blockchain technology. So I think this failure of the platform should provide some food for thought. The blockchain is a very interesting technology and solves some problems such as double spending, traceability, and immutability, especially for use cases where participants do not trust each other. On the other hand, it is complex and cumbersome compared to traditional databases. So the technology should be first, rather focus on, technology should not be first, rather focus on the needs. This is one of the recommendations. The use of big data and data analytics, AI, and machine learning in customs and border management presents a tremendous opportunity in the cross-border movement of people and on the commercial side, as a huge volumes of data are generated by people and goods moving cross borders. This group of technology provides ability to make sense of this huge and ever-increasing amount of data. This technology can be used to ingest this data and to detect and predict patterns more accurately than humans can. So customs is for sure rich of data, but not maybe smart of data. And this technology can help to make sense of this volume of data we have. According to the survey, 45% of the customs authority use data analytics or AI or both, while 10% planning to introduce it, another 10% use AI, while 12% are planning to introduce it. The benefits, we also asked for this technology, our members, the members can see clear benefits from big data and AI, with risk management and profiling, fraud detections, and greater compliance being the most prevalent, facilitating customs audits and identification of anomalies and improving revenue collection were also emphasized by a number of members. Furthermore, predicting future trends, enhancing trade facilitation, and improving imaging and visual search technology were indicated as benefits. So regarding to the main obstacles, a lack of expertise is the biggest challenge of customs authorities in implementing big data analytics. Other challenges include cost, lack of good practices, existing legacy systems, lack of traction in the use of this technology by other stakeholders, lack of government strategy, as well as legal issues. Member also highlighted other challenges such as a data governance issue, data quality, information organization, roles and function, and existing tools problems. Here are some use cases, but I will not go into it given to the time. You can see it as well in the study report, which is available on our website and the website of the WTO. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christian. As I've said, all the questions will be collected after the next presentation. So next presentation speaker is Ms. Hannah Nguyen, International Chamber of Commerce Digital Standard Initiative. Hannah.
Thank you very much, Sue, and good morning to everyone who's joining us online and in person in Bangkok. My wish is I would have been there with you in person, but today I can't do that. So very nice to meet you all today, and very honored to be asked to participate in this panel and talk about how do we actually look at the challenges and opportunities presented by emerging technologies. So my name is Hannah Nguyen, Director of Digital Ecosystems at the ICC Digital Standards Initiative. And today in my brief presentation, we'd like to talk about some of the perspective that we have gained through the public-private cooperation setup that we have here at the Digital Standards Initiative, and talk about some of the issues as well as potential principles in which we could employ as we look forward how to harness all these wonderful technologies that William and Christian has done a great job in elaborating. So without further ado, let me move on. Okay, the first slide I will go very quickly because this is just an introduction of the ICC Digital Standards Initiative. I believe that some of you may have heard about us and we may have met at some of the previous conferences and workshops organized by ESCAP. But for those of you who have not met or come across our work, this is a global initiative that sits under the umbrella of the International Chamber of Commerce, better known as the World Business Organization. So we represent 45 million corporate members. And as part of that, we realize one of the big missions for our organization is to help businesses navigate the digital economy and digital trade. And with the consensus from both public and private sector that we need to work together in order to accelerate this journey, which has started more than 20 years ago, we set up this umbrella with the seed funding from Asian Development Bank and the government of Singapore to base the project out of Singapore with a global mandate to actually accelerate this journey. So we are also very fortunate to have the World Trade Organization and World Customs Organization on our governing board, setting the tone and the importance in the international scene about why this initiative is so needed in order to create a harmonized and digitized trade environment for all. So let's take a step back and think about the supply chain that we have and what is keeping supply chain managers up at night. So this is probably a question that you may not ask yourself every day, because we talk about cross-border paperless trade, and mainly most of the time we talk about how to make goods and services clear faster at the border. But if we take a look out into the entire supply chain from end to end, even post-COVID, right? There still are a number of issues that need to be solved, and these are the ones that sometimes stop the supply chains or keep the supply chain managers up at night. And this actually affects every one of us, even as consumers or policymakers for that matter. So the 5 circles that you see in front of you on this slide represent the 5 different interconnected issues that supply chain managers need to worry about. Firstly, supply chains move with increasingly higher and higher speed nowadays, especially because of the rise of electronic and mobile commerce. And so because of that, the need for more accurate and timely data becomes higher than ever. Producers and manufacturers and supply chain managers can no longer rely on the traditional patterns of buying, production planning based on past data. They need real-time data right now in order to respond to fast-changing consumer trends. At the same time, there's also a need for higher traceability and security capabilities, especially given the geopolitical tensions. And also the supply chains need to be more resilient, because you just don't know in this volatile and disrupted environment where the next congestion or issues might arise from. And the last but not least, the sustainability imperative is something that arises and keeps people up at night, because they need to comply with regulations, but also respond to consumer preferences. So all of that needs big and accurate data in a timely manner. So where does technology fit into all of this? So it turns out that technology and digitalization is a big ingredient in order to solve many, if not all of these supply chain issues. So of course, in order to have speedier and more accurate data, we need to rely on automation, robotics, and virtual design and development at the stage of production. We also need to make sure that as that good moves from manufacturing to consumer, through all of the supply chain processes in between, we need to be able to see the data as it moves through the supply chain and have decision-making based on that real-time data. And also because of that real-time data, we will be able to do the forecasting, use machine learning on all those current and past data to predict future patterns and how to react to that in real time. At the same time, technology and cloud computing give us that visibility and ensure traceability and security, both for businesses and governments who need to have a view onto all of these processes. And of course, last but not least, in order to ensure resilience in our supply chains, in preparation for the next whatever disruption that might be, we need to ensure that supply chain partners are seamlessly connected and are able to share relevant information in a situation of disruption. And last but not least, sustainability. That is where technologies play a role in order to drive efficiencies, help to trace where that product comes from, where it has been touched, and where all the different value-add processes have been layered on it. And of course, how to make sure that that data remains auditable in a trail that can be verified by both businesses, consumers, and regulators. So we have talked a little bit about, the different issues in the supply chain within it and where technologies can play a big part in solving. I also like to, take us back to the reality where most of us are today. And the reality is that most of the data that we want to be able to apply technologies on continue to come in paper-based form. And that is a really inefficient way, because if we talk about a normal supply chain process, we talk about, let's say, 50 pieces of paper being exchanged between 30 parties. And so just multiply the number and you imagine the amount of reconciliation, translation, and sources of error and even fraud that could arise because of those exchanges based on paper. So before we think about applying technology on those data, we need to think about, are the data that we're receiving in the most efficient manner? Are they reliable? Can they be trusted? Can they be made much better? So on the right-hand side, you see a very long list, a very big table that comprises about 40 documents. And this is extracted from a recent paper by ESCAP, WTO, and UNCITRAL, the Cross-Border Paperless Trade Toolkit, which takes stock of the various documents that pass through the supply chain. And you can see that there are a lot of cross-border compliance documents, but also there's a lot of commercial documents, finance and payments, transport logistics, and documents of title, whose data elements actually fit into the cross-border regulatory process. And so our stance looking at all of these documents is that we really need to digitize and automate the processes at the border, but also there is a very big challenge and remains a very big reward if we could also digitalize the exchange of data within the supply chain itself. Okay, so my time is running out, I think. So in the next 3 minutes or so, I will attempt to share with you 3 main principles that we think are really important as we take a look at all these challenges and how do we actually solve some of them to make sure that we have a good foundation to apply all of these amazing emerging technologies. So the first principle as we look at it is, I really like what William mentioned at the first presentation of the session today about harmonization of data, because without that, we can't really apply technologies on it. And William also mentioned something very important, that harmonization of data need to be based on international standards. So that is something that we really believe in as well. And that's what we did earlier this year together with the WTO. We actually take stock of the entire landscape document and come up with the first standards toolkit for cross-border paperless trade. And this provides an overview of existing international standards such as industry e-bills of lading standard that can help to drive interoperability between different supply chain actors and different processes. However, we also recognize, that there's further harmonization that needs to be done, and this is an ongoing dialogue that we're having between governments and industries and standards development organizations. So those organizations like ISO, WCO, UNECE, those are all our stakeholders in the industry advisory board that help us to take a look at what are the gaps or issues that we need to remain to iron out in order to achieve that interoperability. The second principle that I'd like to share with you and really suggest we take a good look at is how to make digital identity an essential public good. So what do I mean by that? So as we really think about how do we digitalize all the exchange of data across the supply chain, trust remains a very big issue. How do I know and trust where this data comes from and can actually act on it? Is it authentic? Was it tampered with? Was it really original, right? So these are questions that cross-border agencies as well as private sector players need to ask. And so what you see on the screen right now is an experiment. It's a POC by the US Customs and Border Protection, which they are trying to take a look at the existing standards for legal identifiers, some of which come from the private sector, for example, the Dun and Bradstreet number, and then the LEI, which is for legal entity, and then the global location number, GLN, which take a look at the unique location identifier for, let's say, a manufacturing location. So they're looking at this combination and think about, can we determine what is a good combination of a single identifier solution that can help to discern the critical information needed by customs agency as they think about, as this shipment passed through my border, who is the legal entity, who is the owner, where is the global location that this particular goods come from, and so on and so forth. The last principle that I want to really share with you today is really how do we move on and actually think about reiterating and arriving at the best solution for every use case. But I think because technology moves really fast, the really important principle here is not which technology, because I really believe, and many of our stakeholders do believe, that the world is so diverse, we will have a interoperability enabled in a technology neutral and vendor agnostic environment. That means that it doesn't really matter whether you choose blockchain and I don't. At the end of the day, even if we come from two different technologies, as long as we are operating on the same set of internationally accepted standard, there is a way for us to interconnect, even though we use different platforms, different technologies, different vendors. But standards is the beautiful thread that actually help us to connect through one another. And so some of the examples that I put on the screen here are examples that I see this principle being in action. So the first example is the blockchain trial between Australia and Singapore, trying to show that two different blockchain platforms chosen by two different governments can still exchange seamlessly the ECO data. And the other two examples talk about, how regulatory sandbox can be used to tackle some of the emerging issues when you talk about data sharing. So can we actually have data sharing and big data analytics without infringing on commercial data secrets? These are some of the issues being asked. And then the last but not least example from the Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore is really using industry standards such as DCSA EBL standard and asking industry to come up with solutions to leverage those standards. And some of the consortiums actually come up with blockchain solutions, some don't. So actually it's a very diverse landscape that is being enabled by the use of standards. All right, so this is the last slide I have for you this morning. And really this is just to anchor you back to that vision and the benefits that, having a consensus data set being agreed as a foundation for us to actually apply many of these emerging technologies on. And I will not, repeat the benefits that have been well articulated this morning by our various speakers, but sufficient to say that emerging technologies have great potential to really enable traceability, flexibility, resilience, and transparency in the supply chains, enable governments to really, improve the transparency of supply chains without additional manpower, and then also enable them to have real-time visibility into what's happening. And of course, very importantly, last but not least, it helps our MSMEs for them to actually grow, to able to be compete, and also to get access to trade financing, which is the lifeblood to global trade. So that's the last one I have for you this morning. Thank you so much for your attention. I'm glad to take any questions after. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you very much, Hannah. I do note that we are towards the end of the time, but I see the importance and the benefits of having some questions taken. So what I would do is I take the questions, and the speakers, Bill, Christian, and Hannah, can answer it in a comprehensive manner at the end of it. So can I open the floor and any questions? I know that there has been many very big ideas about traceability, interoperability, harmonization, and such, but I think there were also some very concrete recommendations and suggestions, such as the regulatory sandbox that Hannah was just referring to. Okay, so I'll open the floor. Anyone?
There is one question from the webinar.
For some reason, I cannot read it from here. Okay. My eyesight is not that good.
Sorry. Okay. The questions from Bella. She say like would appreciate much if oh okay. Okay, she just want presentation. Sorry. I'll answer.
Okay, no, we can do that. From the meeting room, can I take any questions? Tasin, yes.
Thank you, Sue. My question is to Hanan from ICC. She has mentioned about 3 different identity numbers in her presentation. I know the benefit of going into a unique identifier for global trade, but there are issues about which number to be followed, and that's perhaps the reason that we debate on distributed numbering system or distributed identity framework to be taken into considerations, or verifiable credentials to be taken into consideration. What is ICC's take on this? What is your conclusions on the numbering system for global trade?
Thank you so much. This is a really big question and a very important question. And I do agree with you that distributed IDs and verifiable credentials have a big role to play, and also great potential to actually resolve some of the issues in supply chain. And I think UNCFAC has released a very good paper on this recently. So that is, I think, a very good resource to inform many of our stakeholders. At the same time, we're not making a pick right now in terms of what number, because at the end of the day, I think there will be a slightly different or maybe a diverse set of different identifiers. But the potential of technology, and I can't go into the details here, is that there is a way to actually resolve the different systems, so that when we go into a system-to-system communication, there is still one immutable digital identity that the systems can recognize, so that you can actually know who you are transacting with. Is that person trusted with the data, and can they actually access the data on your end? So for that purpose, I can only share that at the moment within our industry advisory board working group under the DSI, we have a working group on this trusted technology environment, and they're working on a set of recommendations as to what constitutes such a trusted technology environment, including how to take a look at this digital identities issue. So that recommendation will be ready sometime early next year in Q1. So I will look forward to share that with the entire community, and of course with this group once that is ready. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other question? Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. I just wanted to know now, when we are talking about integrating the data, are we just talking about customs data, or are we also talking about the other cross-regulatory authority data where they play an important part as well?
I think Bill might be the best person to answer. Bill?
Sure. Yeah. No, I think that was one of the points that I picked up in my presentation, was that, it's really important to have a whole of government approach to, to digitization, automation, and exchange of data. It's all very well for customs to be exchanging data, But when it comes to, the SPS environment, its standards environment, it's going to be, important to integrate all of that together into the one platform. And we're not seeing that completely anywhere really yet, but I know the ICC work will, pick up aspects of it. And, was part of some of, particularly on the logistics data. TradeLens was going to pick up some of that as well. Unfortunately, it's not coming out the way that we thought it would, but, the work that's been undertaken shouldn't be lost. And I think it needs to be thought about holistically at the international level. And of course, interoperability of data, has to be anchored in the data models. And so our WCO colleague might be able to talk a little bit about the latest thinking around the WCO data model. And obviously the UNECE interoperability recommendations and, the data model there, which is, heavily biased towards the private sector kind of pieces, needs to kind of all come together with the WCO, I think, to a data model that is open source, easy to access, and, available to all technology partners, and able to be integrated, easily and quickly into cross-border solutions. Perhaps I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Christian?
Yes, just to complement the answer, the DICE data model is also not only for customs, it's for all cross-border regulatory agency data requirements. Because when we talk about the implementation of data transfer, we cannot see it from only from a customs perspective. We also always need to see it in a single window perspective. So this is why the DICE data model is not only for customs. It used to be for customs, but still for a long time, it's for all cross-border regulatory agency data requirements.
Okay, thank you. There are 3 questions online. I'll just briefly summarize it. The first question is about the containers when the AI technology is used. Would that be causing any congestions at the port because it needs to be analyzed immediately? The second question is about the nature of the blockchain being the decentralized systems, and what would be the implications and also the difficulties and challenges using the blockchain when the trust is one of the most important issues. The third question is how to harmonize this data among customs authorities and the stakeholders around the globe, which I think Bill and Christian just answered a bit. So with these 3 questions, I just ask Hannah, Bill, and Christian to give their final thoughts for 1 minute, and I'll wrap up the questions and answers unless any further. Thank you. So Bill, you want to go first?
Sure. No, thanks, Sue. Look, yeah, I think my final thoughts, which pick up most of that, really is that when it does come to technologies, it's got to be validated input. So we get, validated output and outcome that actually can be trusted. So, with blockchain, it's easy, in like a linear one process financial transaction, say, validated by, say, 2 banks. But when it comes to, what we heard from Hannah when she talked about, 30 stakeholders and, 50 transactions, and it's very easy for the blockchain to become inaccurate and untrustworthy from end to end. And so, as they say, garbage in is garbage out. So the validation, I think, is absolutely critical. And I think we already talked a little bit about the standards and that before, so I'll maybe, given the time constraints, hand over to my other 2 colleagues. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Hannah?
Thank you. I think, like William mentioned, there's a lot of big questions here, and I think looking at the questions on the chat, I think it's indicative of how much the knowledge is already in the room, but also we are looking at the same issues. So I just like to highlight that actually UNCITRAL has also a model law on identity management and trust services. That is also a very good guideline for many of us to take a look. I think many of us are already aware of this work, and also looking at the different streams coming out of that. But also looking at the data privacy aspect, right? That is something that we all care about, both as government and business supply chain actors, looking at how to actually make sure that we have the benefits of data sharing without the pitfalls that may come with it. So I think besides blockchain, that obviously has certain advantages, there's also other technologies in the works that is already being implemented, both in the both in the regulatory environment and also commercial environment. So one of these is, for example, confidential computing. So I know that I just introduced another term into the room and we don't have time for this, but I think the pace of technology is really fast, and I'm quite confident that as we move along and identify issues, there will also be new avenues for solutions from the different parts of technology that we can actually make use of. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Christian?
So the question regarding the container was if it's, can you please repeat the question? Sorry.
All the containers are required to go through the scanner machine with the AI technology, cause the congestion at the port because it needs a split second to analyze the image to curb smuggling activities. How to overcome this issue?
Yeah, I think still, if we have this AI technology, it's not the purpose to scan all the containers. So there must be a risk assessment before. Yeah. So there's no change when we introduce these technologies. There no need to scan more containers than before.
Yeah, very noted. So thank you very much for all speakers from the part 1, Bill, Christian, and Hannah. Thank you very much. Now, I would like to move to the part 2, which we will be discussing about the good practices. So with the opportunities and the topics that 3 speakers have already mentioned, let us see how it has been implemented or how it has been experienced. So first speaker that I have is Mr. Sang-Yong Park, Korea Customs Service.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Sang-Yong Park from Korea Customs Service. I'm working at the headquarters of Korea Customs Service. This morning, I'd like to introduce you to the implementation of ECO, Certificate of Origin, by Korea Customs Service and efforts to cooperate with international partners to widen the practice. I'll begin with current status of FTA implementation of Korea, followed by traditional flow of CO, implementation of ECO in Korea, benefits of ECO, and finally, cooperation with the ASEAN member states to exchange the ECO between Korea and 10 ASEAN countries. Before introducing the ECO, let me briefly introduce the status of Korea's FTA implementation. This slide shows the current status of FTA implemented by Korea.
Technical issue, so just give us 30 seconds.
Okay. May I continue or start again? Yes.
You can just continue.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Before introducing the ECO, let me briefly introduce the status of Korea's FTA implementation. This slide shows the current status of FTA implemented by Korea. Starting with Chile in 2004, Korea signed 18 FTAs with 183 countries and is currently in effect. In addition, FTAs with 5 countries have been reached agreement, and Korea is preparing for entering into force of them. Korea has signed FTAs with major trading partners, starting with signing FTA with Chile in 2004, as I mentioned. As a result, the FTA trade volume is now 77.1% compared to the total trade volume in Korea. The CO certificate of origin is one of the most important documents to be subject to FTA preferential tariffs. In order to receive preferential tariffs using the FTA, the importer has to submit the CO to the customs. This slide shows you the traditional flow of CO. After carrying out export clearance, the exporter apply for the CO and receive it from the customs in exporting country. The CO is sent to the importer by international mail service. Then the importer submits this paper type CO to customs to apply the preferential tariff. This diagram shows the FTA-related complaints experienced by Korean exporters at overseas customs. Of the total of 115 complaints, 103 complaints are related to the CO, as you see on the slide. In this context, there is a great need to improve the issuance, delivery, and utilization system of paper type CO. Korea Customs has been implementing electronic certificates of origin, namely ECO, to promote utilization of preferential trade by importers and exporters through a simplified origin procedure. This system is more appropriate if there is a lot of trade between FTA parties and requires a lot of CO information to be exchanged at once. Korea Customs has built an electronic origin data exchange system, which is EODES, and has been exchanging ECO data with China since December 2016 and with Indonesia since March 2020. Currently, Korea Customs is working closely with Vietnam and India to develop EODES. In addition, Korea Customs is in bilateral discussion with Singapore and Israel Customs on the implementation of ECO in line with Korea-Singapore Digital Partnership Agreement and Korea-Israel FTA coming into effect soon. In the ECO model utilizing electronic verification system, instead of exchanging ECO data, customs administrations check authenticity of ECO on the electronic verification systems of the issuing authorities, and the importers are exempted from submitting the original paper CO. They can either submit a printed or electronic copy of original CO instead. This is the benefits of ECO. The benefits of ECO originates from digitalizing paper-based origin certification procedure, and as a result, enhancing efficiency and transparency of origin procedure. ECO contributes to simplification of origin certification procedure and the reduction of administrative and logistics costs for the traders by replacing original paper CO and ensuring the authenticity. It will lead to enhancing FTA utilization and trade facilitation. The exchange of ECO data with China and Indonesia is estimated to have reduced logistics costs and costs for Korean exporters as much as 90 million US dollars in 2021. Further implementation of ECO is expected to bring even more considerable economic benefits in the future. This is the ECO status inquiry screen, which is provided by Korea Customs Service. The example of the screen. Users can access to the FTA portal site, which is provided by the Korea Customs, to inquire about the transmission and the processing status of their ECO. Korea Customs also developed a mobile site, which provides the same information. Now, I'd like to talk about the CO exchange between Korea and ASEAN. The talk about Korea-ASEAN single window dates back to 2015. It was finally decided the two sides would consider exchanging ECO, and the feasibility study on establishment of ASEAN ROK regional CO exchange platform was approved at the ASEAN Single Window Steering Committee in April last year. Currently, the project plan was in the final reviewing stage by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Korea. The study is expected to start in the first quarter of 2023 and completed in the third quarter. In the meanwhile, the discussion began under AKFTA, ASEAN and Korea FTA, last year. The AKFTA subcommittee on tariff and rules of origin was mandated by the higher committees to discuss exchange of ECO under AKFTA. The meeting agreed to discuss possible amendments to the AKFTA to allow the ECO following the result of the feasibility study. I'd like to wrap up my presentation by introducing a way forward. Most of all, Korea Customs is looking forward to exchange the ECO with ASEAN countries, hopefully 1 to 10 connection, which is exchanged between Korea and 10 ASEAN countries via ASEAN single window. This would be most time and cost efficient. Next year, it is planned Korea-Vietnam and Korea-India ECO exchange will begin service. To Korea-Indonesia EODS, the service will be added as soon as Korea-Indonesia SEPA comes into effect next year. In addition, Korea Customs is working closely with the World Customs Organization to spread the implementation of ECO. WCO acted upon the proposal of Korea Customs in April this year and is now developing an ECO tool. WCO conducted the survey on ECO last September, and Korea Customs contributed by sharing best practice. The tool will be reviewed by the WCO Technical Committee on Rules of Origin next February. I'm looking forward to continued close cooperation and on the implementation of ECO and the facilitation of trade between Korea and other FTA contracting parties. ECO exchange will be a big step forward to strengthen the partnership between parties as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Park. I will take the questions at the end of all speakers. So let me move to the next speaker, who is Mr. Sri Eric Lalaupuya, Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs, Department of Revenue, Minister of Finance of India. So Eric will be sharing with us the good practices of India in this regard.
Thank you so much, Sue. Good morning to all our colleagues who have gathered here and to our colleagues who have joined from online. So the presentation that I propose to share with you are to run through briefly the reforms that we have done in the recent years. And I've been engaged with the customs reforms in India for the last 3 years from COVID times. So I must say, with all humility and a sense of pride, that we have done quite a few initiatives which are primarily meant for a paperless trade and to support the trade in ensuring that the cost and time associated with clearance of goods, primarily on the import side, is cut down quite significantly. So I propose to run through you primarily the kind of landmarks which have happened in recent times, and our flagship program, which is the Turant Customs. Turant is a Hindi word. It just means immediate. It just means urgent. So, and the paperless customs initiatives, the contactless customs initiatives, faceless customs initiatives, and briefly on the electronic cargo tracking system, which we are now doing with Nepal, Bangladesh, etc., and some of the other features which I feel will be relevant for today's discussion. The presentation which I propose to share with you are primarily the kind of domestic initiatives that we have taken. It will enable you to have a very practical feel of what we are actually doing on the ground. The slide you see in front of you gives you a snapshot of the recent landmarks that we have taken since the 1990s. I must also inform that this week we are celebrating 60 years of the national legislation, which is the Indian Customs Act. So tomorrow there's going to be a nationwide celebration all over the country. So I must say that it's a bit ironic as well. In 1995, we had a very significant landmark achievement where the submission of the customs document was made electronic. So this was a very landmark year. So this was followed by the export side as well. And again, a very significant landmark in 2005, where we introduced the risk management system in customs. So the RMS enabled us to have a balance between facilitation and enforcement. So this was also, again, very, very significant. And I must also mention about the very critical legal change that we have brought about in our law in 2011, which was a self-assessment. So previous to this regime, all the declarations which the members of the trade submitted were required to be scrutinized as per law, all of them by the government officials. This was done away with. So we are now relying on the self-declaration of the importers from 2011. And 2017-18, we introduced electronic sealing on the export side. And we introduced the single window system where the participating government agencies were able to submit their legal requirements on our own platform, an electronic online platform. And we also have the e-Sanchit. E-Sanchit means an accumulation. It's a Hindi word again. So e-Sanchit is primarily an online repository of all the supporting documents. Besides the customs documents, there are also other documents which are required to be submitted as per law. So these are also now submitted on an online platform. So then again, the very critical reforms that we have done quite recently from 2019 and 2020. So some of them I'll be sharing here just for your information and perusal. So again, this gives you a snapshot of the initiatives that we have taken under the umbrella of Turant Customs. Turant Customs is primarily like a big umbrella. So under that, we have the subset of different reforms on faceless, paperless, and contactless. So we have the iStrack application, which is actually a mobile app. Then we digitized, we made electronic the customs documents, the clearance side, we call it the out of charge copy. So the PDF copy was transmitted from March 2020. Then again, the e-Sanchit, which I briefly informed, and RMS. Then faceless assessment, again, a very big reform, which I'll be running through you. Compliance verification, customs compliance verification, which is what we call automated clearance. We have made the final point of the clearance of customs electronic now. The members of the trade need not come to our department for getting their goods cleared at the final leg. And we have also made the physical registration online. Sorry, the registration online. It was physical. This we did in 2018-19. Then automated queuing, again, very significant, very practical. And direct port entry on the export side and direct port delivery on the import side. And RFID e-seals we introduced from 2017-18. for the sake of avoiding repetition, I will just skip this slide. So this is one significant feature of the paperless customs initiative that we have done, the single window interface for facilitating trade. So through this interface, we now enable integrated declaration given by different participating government agencies, like the agency who is responsible to monitor the edible consignments, food consignments, the plant quarantine department, animal quarantine, etc. So their risk requirements are also being shared to us through this same platform, and we enforce on their behalf. Although customs is just one player in the goods clearance process, we are quite significant because we are responsible for enforcing the requirements of other agencies as well. So this has led to considerable reduction in cost of doing business. It also presents a more transparent, accountable face of the Indian administration in general, apart from just customs. And it also allows us to prioritize other areas of work. We need not utilize all our manpowers on clearance only. And as I have mentioned, this is the eSanchit platform. It is an online repository for the supporting documents, apart from the main documents which are required to be submitted to customs as per law, like for example, invoice, packing list, all these other mandatory documents which are required to be submitted along with the customs declaration. Now these are being done online on eSanchit. This was done in 2017. And this is the simple mobile track application. So this allows the members of the trade who are registered on our platform to track their consignments. Apart from their consignments, they are able to track the status of their export benefits, the kind of applications that they have lodged with the department. This is what we call the electronic out of charge and the electronic lead export order. The out of charge is a terminology that we have, which is the final leg of the customs clearance process on import side. So this was done just before the COVID pandemic hit us in March 2020. So just before we had a nationwide lockdown, we managed to roll out the automated clearance, the transmission of the PDF copies of the import declarations to the trade. So the complementary change on the export side was done in June 2020. So the PDF copies of the import and export documents are being transmitted to the members of the trade who are registered to our department. So now this is quite significant, as we have heard from our colleagues from the other international organizations, because previous to this, we used to have separate offices just for storing paper documents. So this requirement has now been done away with. Now the PDF copies of the customs documents, which is the bill of entry on the import side and the shipping bill on the export side. So you can carry it around on your phone in your system. So you don't need to take printouts anymore. This was quite significant. And again, complementing the change that I just informed previously. So before this change, which we introduced in 2020, so the members of the trade had to come to our office. They had to present the details to us. They had to come to us to seek clearance of a particular consignment, which will have a bill of entry number. It'll have a bill of entry date. So we made this change. The corresponding legal change was also done 1 year before this. Both the legal change and the administrative changes have been done. If the systems, our custom system acknowledges that the inspection report, the examination report is being fed, and if the admissible customs dues have been paid and they are recognized in the system, then the system itself gives clearance to the consignment. So this is again very significant. So it does not require a physical interface between the departmental officer and the trade. So I will again briefly run through some of the contactless customs features. This again was one thing which was triggered by COVID. So before we had different sections in the office which requires physical interface with members of the trade. Now we have one facilitation center, which is the Turan Suveda Kendra. This was actually required because of COVID. So now it is in vogue. Now we have just one point for physical interaction with the trade, which is the Turan Suveda Kendra. And this is primarily for the consumption of the trade. This is on our website. This is the ICE dash. So this gives you an hourly update of the performance of different customs ports all across the country with color codes of the dwell time associated with the ports. So the consignments which are being cleared within 48 hours, cleared between 48 and 72 hours, cleared after 72 hours. So it gives you an idea about how efficient a certain port is. For example, a customs port in Bangalore compared to a customs port in Delhi, or vice versa. Within the ports associated in Delhi, which ports are more efficient. So it actually gives the traders an option for port shopping. So this gives you an hourly update. This is for the public consumption. So this is also available with the departmental officers. The supervisory officers also have a role in this. We monitor and track. And the debit of bonds, the different bond formalities are also submitted to Customs Department. So this has also been made electronic now from the back end in the customs system. So the importers need not come to us with paper documents. This is now, the debiting of bonds is now done electronically. This was also done around July, August 2020. And the registration of the authorized dealer code, we call it, and bank accounts, etc. So this was also done away with. Now everything can be done on our electronic platform, our IceGate. So to get certain export benefits, or in general, if the members of the trade are required to interact with a particular customs office, they are required to register with that particular office. So previously they had to go to that office and do the registration physically. So that has been done away with. It can be done online, sitting from home. So they can give the bank account details for export benefits. So all the paper submissions which were done before are now being done online through the IceGate system. This is the same thing. For getting the export benefits, we need to have their bank accounts, etc. All these things can be submitted on IceGate. It can even be amended on IceGate. So the transmission, all these things will be done over electronic mails. And this, I would say, is one of the biggest reform that we have done in Indian customs in the recent past. This is faceless assessment. So this was done in June 2020. So we had a pilot going on before that. So this was accelerated because of COVID as well. Yeah, for us, COVID to a certain extent was a blessing in disguise as far as customs procedures are concerned. So previously, if an importer was required to clear his import consignments in a station A, all the formalities were done in station A. But after faceless assessment, the document verification is done by any other officer sitting across the country. So if a consignment is presented for clearance in, say, Delhi, so his document verification will be done by an officer sitting other than Delhi. So, but the system, the architecture is such that a certain percentage will still flow to Delhi, but majority, I would say 90%, are being thrown all across the country. So the physical interface with an assessing officer has now been lost. So now it is made anonymous. So the trader does not know who is the official assessing his document. So it allows us to present a more professional and accountable face of the customs administration. So this is very, very significant. So we are trying to make it transparent. We are trying to make the entire customs clearance process standardized as well. That is still a work in progress. And we are trying very much to enable faster release of goods because of this. And we also, on our part, try to ensure that this will enable specialization of officers. So this is meant for ease of doing business in general. I'm coming slowly to the end of my slides. This is the electronic cargo tracking system. So this is a GPS-based tracking system primarily on exports. So we are in touch with Nepal and Bangladesh. So this will allow, if not real time, on predetermined times, we are able to track the containers, the integrity of the seals, all those things are being tracked through a GPS system. So this is meant for reducing the cost and time associated with consignments. And it is also very critical because it allows us to decongest our ports so that we can receive more containers coming in. So that is again very significant from our perspective. And the last slide, which I'm showing before you, is primarily for the trade. It's called a customs information portal. So this is also a compliance that we have done to the WTO's trade facilitation agreement. Not all the traders are very well aware of the kind of compliance requirements. So in one snapshot, we have this compliance information portal, the legal requirements, the prohibitions which are in place, the the duties which are payable, all the different kinds of requirements which the trade has to comply with, they can access it from here. So this was done quite recently, in fact. So that is about it from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So we have heard from two country practices from Korea and India. Now I would like to move to the other side of it. So we've got private sector stakeholder providers. So I will be starting with Mr. Desmond Tay, CEO of Good. Desmond?
All right, thanks, thanks Sue, and thanks Jan and Sue for having me here today. Okay, let me share my screen. Yeah, hopefully, will you be able to see my screen?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. So again, thanks everybody, and I believe you have a very long morning. I'll keep my presentation short and sharp and straight to the point. Right. So yeah. So I'd like to share. We heard this morning a lot about blockchain. We heard quite a fair bit about using of blockchain for certificate of origin or many other trade and shipping documents. So what I'd like to share here today with you is a couple of case studies that we actually have done implementation. One is actually on the exchange of certificate of origin between Singapore and Belgium. The other one is the exchange of the electronic bill of lading between Singapore and China, Shenzhen, to be specific. Right. A very quick introduction about myself. My name is Desmond. I'm the CEO of a company called Good. Good, we are very much a global trade technology company to make trade simpler and, most importantly, more inclusive for everybody. All right. And as I mentioned, this morning I'll be sharing two case studies that has been implemented for a while and currently is still going on a pilot basis. The very first is actually on the certificate of origin, right? So this morning we hear quite a fair bit about the advantages of using blockchain for various documents. I'll probably not go into that and repeat that, but I guess in fact most of you, if you're here for this framework and this session, in certain extent you do believe that data exchange is actually very important, especially for cross-border trade moving forward. And blockchain is actually one of the critical technology, I would say, that actually will make this happen. But it's not about 100% digitalization, as you know, that it's very difficult to get all stakeholders to be digitalized. So sometimes you need to be able to cross the world between a digital world and still a paper world, because probably a large part of stakeholders are still stuck with paper. A very simple and very neat technology that we actually use to actually help to cross this is actually just a very simple QR code, right? So in the certificate of origin, apart from being it digitalized, we do expect that we are not still living in a 100% digital world. There are still people who needs a paper certificate, but then how do you link and cross this paper certificate back to the digital certificate? So using a very simple QR code where you can just use a mobile app to actually scan the code and then pull out the blockchain data to actually validate your certificate. There's something that we actually introduced into the electronic certificate of origin as well. How the ECO works on blockchain, I'll again not go into detail. Perhaps some of you are quite familiar with this. Basically, you have traders who comes in, apply certificate online, gets approved by either the Ministry, Customs, or even Chamber of Commerce. This is then so-called embedded into a blockchain, be it a public blockchain or a permissible blockchain. I think that's very much, the concept of the blockchain on certificate of origin. But there's one point that actually I'd like to show on this particular diagram. If you go to all the way to the last point here, point number 6, something we call fingerprinting, right? It's something that actually using paper, you actually cannot achieve this, but using technology like blockchain, you actually can do that, because, a lot of time when you issue certificate of origin, how many times do you know that this certificate is being utilized? How do you know that this certificate goes to the recipient, goes to the intended recipients, and is being utilized, right? In fact, it doesn't know, right? Because once you're on a paper, you don't know what happens to the paper. But the beauty of using, digital technology, and in this case, blockchain, is that we actually embedded small smart contract codes onto the blockchain, right? So that when the certificate is being utilized, is actually fingerprinted onto the certificate. So you know that, did the recipient receive it? Did it receive through their system, or is received, scanned through their mobile app? Just I mentioned that, we're still not in a 100% digital world. People could still use paper certificate. You could scan it. Did someone actually scan this certificate? So that actually creates a fingerprint onto blockchain, and then you actually can track utilization. And why utilization is so important? Because if a company keeps applying for a certificate and it's not being utilized, probably something is going around, or something is not right going on with this particular company. So you actually can track this particular company down, right? So these are, not just about, bringing a paper into a digital technology and that's it, but thinking out of the box, in terms of this, what can we expand? What other services or what other value can you actually extract from the digitalization? Of course, talking about digital certificate is not just about a silo standalone world. You need to connect all the different stakeholders. How do you bring them on board? Who are the stakeholders? Again, I'll not take up too much of your time going through this. But I think from this morning, you could actually get a sense that, digitalization is not just individual, but it's about connectivity. How do you actually get everybody actually to connect together, bringing in value in terms of getting everyone connected together, be it increasing of efficiency, decreasing of cost, eliminating or reducing fraud. So just I mentioned that we actually embarked on a project some time back. So Good itself, we actually work with the Singapore Chambers in terms of issuing a certificate, and then we came across with a partner in Belgium doing something similar, and then we sit down, we had a couple of beer, and then suddenly we decided, like, why don't we connect together? And this is how we actually started to do cross-border sharing of ECO between Singapore and Belgium, and Belgium beer are pretty nice, right? So we actually started to connect together, and again, very typical case study in terms of how the COs are being created online, recorded into a blockchain, transferred from one country to the other country blockchain, and then gets verified on the other authority. And just to give you an example, so what happened on the Singapore side of the story, right? So on Singapore, the Singapore Customs actually have a platform called the Network Trade Platform. It's actually quite a neat platform in the sense that there's this concept of value-added service provider. So you can think of NTP is like an app store. The value-added service providers are different apps you build onto this app store. So it actually encourage private sectors like ourselves to actually work very closely with the government, on this case, the NTP, to build applications that is actually hosted and run on NTP. And one of these applications here is actually the certificate of origin application. So what happened here, if you can see from the diagram, our partner called T Mining in Belgium, working with Belgium Chambers, when there's a certificate of origin that is actually destination to Singapore, this certificate is actually transferred from the T Mining blockchain platform to our platform, which in turn goes into the NTP platform. So then what happens here, apart from using it for customs clearance and things like that, one of the very strong use case, or I would say a very good use case here, is to be able to extract the data and then use it for import permit declaration. Because when we talk to the chambers, when we talk to the traders and ask them, what is the issues, what are the pain points you have in terms of certificate of origin, a very common pain point that actually arise is that, a lot of time the certificate of origin content and the import permit, where be it the cargo owner or the freight forwarder do the declaration on behalf of the cargo owner, doesn't match, doesn't tally at all, right? So that actually causes a lot of delay in terms of the import process. And hence, what could be better than if you can actually use the certificate of origin data to actually input into your import permit declaration. So this is actually one of the use case that we actually deployed in terms of using the certificates of origin data. The other one is the other way around, which is actually the outbound. So on the outbound, we actually partnered with Singapore International Chamber of Commerce. We actually have the preferential and non-preferential certificate. The preferential certificates are all issued in Singapore by Singapore Customs, whereas the non-preferential certificates are actually issued by Chamber of Commerce. In this case, SICC, Singapore International Chamber of Commerce, is actually one of the partners that we work to actually issue. So likewise, during the CO application itself, the CO itself is actually extracted into a UBL format. Again, this data is actually transmitted to T-Mining. So again, when we talk to SICC, right, to understand what is the pain point in terms from a chamber point of view when they issue certificate, one of the biggest pain point they have is that a lot of time when they issue the certificate, the recipients actually call up the chamber to validate the certificate, to verify if this certificate is actually true. It actually takes out a lot of time from the chamber itself. So with this transmission of the data, basically through a trusted platform, that actually reduces or in a way eliminate calls required by the Belgium recipients of the certificate of origin back to SICC to validate the certificate. Now, there's a couple of use cases in terms of how we actually deploy blockchain technology for the purpose of certificate of origin. Of course, there are very good lessons learned from here. One of it is, whenever, so we feel that the success depends a lot on the consortium. Like I said, this is about an ecosystem, connect different stakeholders together, bringing the right consortium on board on day one is actually very important for the project itself. The second lesson is actually how to scale, right? So a lot of time when you do proof of concept, you do pilot, you focus on a certain consortium, a certain ecosystem, but then how do you be able to scale it to a bigger scale? So that is one of the challenge that, perhaps when implementing ECO is something to actually be mindful of, right? So now quickly, I'll move on to the second case study, which is actually on the bill of lading, which is actually another important document in terms of digitalization. In fact, it's actually one of the most difficult documents to actually digitalize, right? Because perhaps you're also aware that bill of lading is actually a legal document. Is a document that actually holds the title of the goods, right? So how do you be able to determine, in the digital copy, which is the original copy and which is the duplicated copies, right? So in this project, again, coming back to the Singapore Customs network trade platform, there's a value-added services that was actually built by us. So this value-added services is actually called Trade Finance Application Portal. So it's a portal that is actually supported by currently right now 11 banks in Singapore, supported by the Central Bank MAS of Singapore, in terms of having a single portal for traders to come in to apply for different trade finance facilities, be it your letter of credit, import financing, pre-shipment financing, and so forth. But apart from doing the application, one of the key functionality is actually the trade documents exchange with counterparty banks, right? Because when you have trade, you involve at least 2 or 3 different banks. And then how do you exchange these documents between the counterparty banks? And one of these important documents is actually the bill of lading, right? So this is actually a project that involves multiple parties. It involves the NTP platform that I mentioned just now, which is actually owned by Customs. It involves a platform called Trade Trust. Just now, I think there's a presenter from ICC. She kind of briefly mentioned about Trade Trust. Trade Trust is a blockchain platform, which actually, is a blockchain utility built or implemented by the Infocom Media Development Authority of Singapore. And I'll share a little bit why this comes into the whole picture. in a short while, and involves the private sector as well. Of course, the two counterparty banks, the issuing bank and the negotiating bank, the importer and exporter in this whole ecosystem. The case study is actually very simple. You actually have an importer in Shenzhen in China, who is actually buying some goods from Singapore. So they actually issued a letter of credit, right? So the issuance of letter of credit, digitalization of that part is is not a big problem, because today you have network like SWIFT and things like that actually connects and between banks and in terms of transferring the documentation. But the issue came when the exporter requires to present the BL to the issuing bank or through their negotiating bank. So which traditionally requires a lot of courier of the actual BL documents, right? So first of all, it takes up time, it's quite error prone and all those kind of issues that you face in terms of manual process. So with this project, what happened is that using the trade finance portal that I mentioned just now, the exporter actually comes to this portal to actually present the BL documentation, right? And when the BL is created by the shipping line, this BL is actually deposited or submitted into the Trade Trust blockchain network, which will then be transmitted electronically to both the negotiating bank and the issuing bank. And then on top of it, a very key feature here is actually the transfer of title. The Trade Trust is not just only a blockchain that holds the data, but it actually has a token, right? So this token represents the owner of the title of the goods. So when the title of the goods is being transferred from the exporter to the carrier, to the negotiating bank, and eventually to the issuing bank, the transfer of the title is actually represented by the transfer of the token, right? This digital token within Trade Trust from one wallet to the other wallet. So eventually, whoever wallet actually holds the token is actually the owner of the cargo. So this is actually a case study that we've done between Singapore and Shenzhen. Again, quick lessons learned, especially for documentation like BL. It's not just only about technology, it's about legislation, about legal framework. So the Singapore actually amended our ETA to actually adopt the UN electronic transferable records as well, to actually be able to support the legislation of the EBL. So that enables us to be able to legally recognize the EBL similarly or equivalent to a paper BL. This initiative, of course, requires multiple stakeholders to work together. The government plays a very important part. So in this case, the IMDA, the MPA, and Singapore Customs actually bring industry partners like us, the technology people, the banks, and of course, the cargo owners and the shipping community to come together as one. All right. So very quickly, that's I have for my presentation. I know the next presenter have a very interesting topic that a lot of people will probably have a question for him. So I'll not steal the thunder and I'll end my presentation here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Desmond. Yes, I think his presentation was highlighting the complexity and how the whole supply chain needs to be approached as an example of bills of lading and also the trade finance portal that Desmond has mentioned. Yes, let me introduce my next and last speaker, who is Mr. Shantanu Gomble, IBM Research India. And yes, TradeLens has been mentioned several times today, so look forward to hearing from the insights. Shantanu.
Thanks, Sue. Thanks for the opportunity to speak here. Hello, everyone. Good morning. I hope I can do, add my inputs to the topic at hand, which I think people are curious about. I can't promise that I have all the answers, obviously, Sue, but thanks for that. So very quickly, I think we all know that customs agencies have this dual problem, a push-pull nature between facilitation and control, where there are increased heavy workloads and a complex network of participants, government as well as private sector, who they need to interact with, all amidst increasingly sophisticated global threats. And with the advent of big data, there's an even greater challenge in terms of the amount of data that needs to be processed. And this is not just about the clearance process, but overall kind of risk assessment and understanding what is happening from a threat perspective and so on. There is a lot of data that is out there today, right? So they say that we are entering the zettabyte era. Currently, we have about 60 zettabytes of data that exists in the world, and that's going to triple in another 2 to 3 years. Just to give you an example, a zettabyte is 1 followed by 21 zeros. So you can just imagine, right, with all the streaming happening, social media, calls, mobile, the proliferation of smartphones, etc., is just creating so much data that it's becoming harder and harder to kind of deal with this, right? So customs agencies must really kind of master these three strategies at the bottom, right? Customer-oriented processes, coordinated digital clearances and processes, etc. And technology can only help in this, right? I think this is something which is very well known. So blockchain-like technology is mentioned several times in the first session and by the speakers before me in this session. Big data and AI, and obviously, I think even Ms. Hannah mentioned some of the more advanced work that is happening in the technology domain around cryptography, zero knowledge proofs, fully homomorphic encryption, etc., confidential computing, etc. And all of these are really progressing at a very fast pace. So just kind of stepping back from a supply chain perspective and cross-border, I think we know that there was this recent announcement about trade lines. I'll come to that in a minute. But as multiple speakers have said today, blockchain seems to be well suited as an underlying technology foundation for supply chains, with its very nice and clean concepts of shared ledgers, smart contracts, privacy, and trust, right? But ultimately, it does come down to sorry, got a pop-up. Yeah, ultimately it does come down to how to do it scalably, right? So this is a kind of a quick view of the various private sector blockchain initiatives that are going on or have recently gone on. Obviously, big ones in the trade logistics domain, in the payments domain, in the trade finance domains, with various levels of maturity, various levels of success, right? And like up to a month or two ago, we used to see these kind of announcements and pilots being successfully done in, say, a particular country with a particular private sector player for a particular use case, right? So this, for example, and of course, not only with technologically advanced countries, but also smaller, lesser developed countries. So here is an example between bill of lading with Citibank and Bangladesh. Similar things have been tried in countries like Sri Lanka. Obviously, Korea, Singapore, China, these kind of countries are more advanced in their trials with technology and so on. But then we all know what happened, right? If you go to tradelens.com today, this is the page that greets you, right? It's announcing about last week that TradeLens is shutting down. It is shutting down in end of Q1, primarily for two purposes. One is that running and operating that commercial business did not turn out to be sustainable. Not necessarily profitable, but sustainable, because it took a lot of effort to bring the ecosystem together, right? So if you kind of step back and see the strategy that was applied, because this was the trade logistics domain to start with, and then having an ecosystem view that I'll come to a bit, that a platform which can really handle events at the scale of global trade will have to be founded on people who are like the big players in the logistics industry, right? So this started obviously as a technology partnership between IBM and Maersk, but very quickly it was understood that other big shippers, other big shipping lines like CMA, CGM, MSC, etc., do need to be part of the governing body, right? And that did happen because together they, along with one or two more shipping lines, really have about 60% of global trade moving on their ships, right? So it was not the case. Obviously, there was a technology element to it in terms of somebody owning, managing, and running the platform. But the domain angle of what to do, how to do, who to work with, those decisions were really taken by that entire working group, who were kind of advisories and obviously fierce competitors to each other, but they did find a way to kind of govern that platform for some point in time, right? And then obviously there were many efforts where TradeLens was kind of integrating itself with various customs authorities all over the world, doing pilots and kind of helping ecosystems come up in, say, countries like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, etc. But all of this obviously took a lot of time because this was a bold and ambitious move kind of envisioned about 6-7 years ago. It really came into being around 2018, if I remember correctly. But even then, obviously, there are reasons like, having the regulatory changes in place, the legalities in place for things like, an e-bill of lading being valid, some of the things that, my colleague, Mr. Desmond just articulated, those law changes need to happen. Still, there are only a handful of countries who have done that, taken a version of MLETR and implemented it in their particular country. I think it's only a handful of countries right now, with the G7 countries now considering it, so on. So obviously the question then became is the technology too fast, and is it it's not the right time to try something like TradeLens? I think we don't know the answers to that question, right? I'll come back to this point with some more lessons learned in a minute. So as it was envisioned, it was an open and neutral blockchain-based platform, with the ecosystem view being that it would have the trusted data about trade, right? So the events data, the documents data across borders, across many, many countries. It would be the system of record across the ecosystem. And then players could kind of build applications on top of them and make it commercially viable for themselves, right? So that was the vision. It was a platform and an ecosystem vision. And, it was all built on technical standards that, many people in this August group have, been contributing to, and so on. So there were standards that were meant, there were organizations and communities that were engaged with, and this took a lot of doing. This took a lot of investment and doing, and the platform did make a lot of progress, right? And from the early programs and the releases and the experiences across, primarily, I would say, Europe and Asia that were gained, were that while the technology, everyone understood that the technology seems to be working, it can be trusted, but from the people perspective, from the business process perspective, some clear lessons learned was that it was not enough to define rules and permissions in the technology. This information needs to be very clearly communicated and articulated to all the participants, right? In terms of how the contracts and agreements are kind of written, and they have to very clearly articulate who owns information, who can see the information, and so on, right? Because one thing that still comes to mind to people is that blockchain means my data will be easily visible to all. That is not the case, but that communication, that education continues to take a lot of time, right? So the agreements have been recently very clearly stating what needs to be published, who owns the rights to the data. Everybody owns their own data, and they selectively permit other specific kind of parties to see the data. That needs to be understood. That education still has to continue for these kind of platforms to make sense, right? And then information sharing on a legitimate need-to-know basis. And one thing that came out, that to do something at that scale with a variety of partners and possibly, the shippers who would ultimately use a platform like this, the preferences must be really, really customizable at scale, right? So think of whatever we buy, right? Say in supermarkets, say food, say electronics equipment, you can imagine the manufacturers of those are very, very big companies by themselves. And again, not only as end users, whether you look at trade finance use cases, or you look at trade logistics use cases, and the likes of Maersk and the other shipping lines really collaborating, it was a very, very, very big undertaking, right? So I think the summary is really that, the significant technology advances, while they have been made, ultimately it was the decision of the TradeLens team, which was kind of a separate company, no longer an kind of an IBM project or a Maersk project. I think they found challenges in terms of really getting the broader community, which typically is known to not kind of cooperate and collaborate with each other because of, very, very old, well-established processes, largely paper-based, but, turning that kind of thing to digitalization is, everyone knew it is going to be a big effort, and it was ambitiously undertaken. But I think it was just moving at a pace which was, not kind of sustainable ultimately from a commercial business point of view. So those were some of the things happening. But there is no doubt in my mind that those kind of platforms, whether it be TradeLens 2, whether it be called something else, whether some other people may build it, will not be possible unless there is more collaboration and cooperation between the private sector and the government sector. What started as primarily a private sector enterprise play ultimately will succeed only when, countries really start coming together and contributing and kind of adopting these kind of technologies and platforms. And it's the instruments like the framework agreement actually which can really bring that about. We have seen a nice acceleration in countries kind of acceding to that. So those are some thoughts and comments, and I know there will be questions that people will have in mind, but that is what I wanted to kind of share my thoughts on with respect to TradeLens and blockchain. I think there is no doubt that these kind of technology developments have to continue in lockstep with what's happening in the regulatory side, in the legal side. But I think it's at some level a little sad that a big ambitious project like this they have decided to close it down. But maybe something will take its place when the time is more right, when countries are more ready and so on. So with that, I'll pause my intervention for now and happy to answer questions and discuss.
Okay, thank you so much, Shantanu. So as he highlighted, the regulatory as well as the entire environment for paperless trade is continuous a process at this moment. Let me open the floor for any questions. Dennis, yes.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for the presentation from India. I think it was comprehensive and covered well the use cases of core customs processes, not just export, import, and transit regimes. So I got two questions here. Is there a completeness check routine in your ESAN cheat? Because I find the ESAN cheat covering all the interagency information sharing, wherein you can really set business rules and information rules based on the requirement of customs and all the other government agencies. So the question is there a completeness check routine in your ESAN cheat application per customs declaration or even per HS code in relation to the number of permits? And the other question is, do you have the raw materials liquidation system in balancing of course, the imported duty-free raw materials under warehousing, under bond and re-export regimes? So just two questions.
Eric, just one more question from online to you. Any reduction of documents that the traders need to submit other than submissions on all documents online at Indian Customs?
Yeah, thank you for the questions. I'll try to answer them one by one. If I've missed any question, I would request if I can be reminded. So the first question was the completeness of the documents on ESAN cheat verification. So the audit of those are done once in a while, so on a periodic basis. But the veracity of the completeness of those actually is done by the assessing officers for the customs purposes. So once in a while, yes, there are certain documents which are being missed out. So at the time of assessing the completeness of those documents, queries have to be raised in the system. So that has to be replied with back, and along with the supporting documents, if they are available, then they are re-uploaded again. So that is done on a case-to-case basis. As a system itself, there is an audit and check which is done on a periodic basis. So I hope that answers your question. May I ask for the second question again? I'm not very clear.
Also, the second question is more on the raw materials liquidation system or under declarations filed under bond or export bond, wherein you balance all the importation of the raw materials and you charge it or reconcile it with the surety bond that you filed against warehousing regime.
Yes. So that again, the verification is also done primarily at the stage of inspection and examination. We have different schemes under Ministry of Commerce, which is a separate ministry, where certain incentives are being given, but the incentives are linked to some export obligations where they are required to export out again the raw materials which are used in manufacturing items, which are supposed to be exported back again. So that is done actually by another agency. So we are in collaboration with them. But for purely from the customs perspective, that is done at two stages. One is the document verification. Secondly, it is as a stage of inspection and examination, whether all the requirements are being met. So I hope I've answered your question. If I have not clarified it, perhaps we can discuss again on the sidelines later. So can I get the next question, ma'am?
Yeah, it's any reduction of documents that the traders need to submit other than submissions online at Indian Customs.
Yeah, recently, in the end of 2020, we did we had a big work where we are phasing out certain documents which were quite obsolete, which were not required anymore. So we issued a circular from the ministry outlining the documents which are still required as per law, and also outlining those documents which may not be required anymore. So that was publicized widely. So that is about it. Other than that, as of now, we ask for only those documents which are legally required to be submitted. So I hope I answered the question.
No, thank you. Any other questions from the floor? Yes, Bhutan.
Thank you. My question is directed to India. First of all, congratulations. There's a lot of achievements that Indian Customs has made in a short span of time. My question is, as you all are aware that Bhutan is heavily dependent on India for international transit. So I was just wondering where that international transit features in all your initiatives in terms of digital perspective. So if it's not there at the moment, are there any plans with the neighboring countries where where there can be a partnership in terms of digitalization of a transit procedure?
Yeah, thank you for the question, ma'am. Actually, your question is part of my proposed presentation for tomorrow. So I propose to share a brief idea about the pre-arrival data processing, etc., which we have in the pipeline with neighboring countries like Bangladesh, Nepal, and Bhutan also. So quite a few things are in the works. So we definitely have policy directions in this regard, specifically in this regard. Some of them are very much on paper now. Some of them are in the implementation stage, like with Maldives, which is already ongoing. So definitely with Bhutan, we are taking it up. It may take some time. So I will give a brief idea about it in presentation, which I propose to share tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other? Yeah. Sorry, Bangladesh. Sorry.
This is Muhammad Shahidul Islam from Bangladesh Customs. My question is also my to Indian colleague. You have mentioned about the ECTS system being implemented for transit passage with Nepal, especially. You have implemented transit ECTS system. What kind of procedure, ECTS system you have in plan for Bangladesh? As far as I know that, ECTS system we are talking about with India, and last month there were some presentations by Indian company as well in Bangladesh on ECTS system being implemented in Bangladesh. But that was some kind of experience sharing how Bangladesh can implement ECTS system. So what kind of progress or update you have about ECTS system being implemented in Bangladesh in coordination with India?
So thank you for the question. Primarily, the kind of ECTS system we plan is for the transit cargoes. So with Bangladesh recently, if I remember correctly, it was since September, we issued a guideline from our department. So the guideline is for such kind of consignments to pass through other countries using India as a transit route. So Bangladesh is also, India as a country, we're engaged with Bangladesh. So tomorrow, I believe I'll be able to throw more light on this matter. So it's quite similar to the engagements that we have with Nepal. Primarily, it is to ensure that we have GPS tracking of containers with RFID e-seals, this electronic cargo tracking system. So I believe I'll be able to share more insights tomorrow. So primarily, the features would be quite similar to what we have with Nepal only. I don't see that there are any special kind of variations from the proposal that we have with Nepal. Thank you.
One more thing, your presentation highlighted the kind of technical or other legal kind of developments that have taken place in Indian customs. But one thing, how these kind of developments, technical, legal, or technological, have been used or are being used or will be used for cross-border paperless kind of customs transactions. Your presentation tomorrow might be highlighting on this issue as well.
Yes, Actually, as far as the legal challenges are concerned, I don't foresee any major challenges. These are mostly administrative matters, and this requires bilateral or multilateral kind of specific agreements. For example, with Maldives, we have to have some specific agreements. For example, with Nepal, it was with the sponsorship of Asian Development Bank. So we would require perhaps a private party who is willing to help us on board. So it's primarily administrative in nature. As far as the legal things are concerned, I would say that not much of a challenge as of now. The kind of requirements that we have in law is for the documents to be submitted online, but those exceptions are also being taken care of by the agreements that we will specifically be signing. Because when we talk about the kind of engagements that we have with countries like Bhutan, Nepal, and Bangladesh, it is mainly being done through the custom station, which still do not have such facilities. Many of them are quite exceptional. So for them, we'll have to carve out exceptions, which is being looked into by the specific agreements which we propose to sign. Thank you.
Tassin.
Thank you, Sue. I go first to Korea. Compliments for a very detailed presentation, and especially with respect to FTA implementations. I do believe that Korea is part of a UN CFACT initiative of standardizing the ECEO. BRS has been done. Korea is part of it, part of Australia, China, Korea, and Singapore initiative. So when we are talking framework agreement, we are talking about standardization to be adopted to achieve cross-border paperless trade, and that is the basics of it. And that's the reason that this project of electronic certificate of origin based on blockchain technology has been pursued, and BRS has been prepared, and a reference implementation is on where Korea Customs is part of it. So would you be going through this implementation once this is fully adopted, that becomes a basis for you to move forward? Because this project stipulates that once ECEO is implemented fully, this will be tried to all other regulatory documents in the foreign trade domain. This is my question to you. Sue, if you permit me, I have one query from India. My friend Eric, that he has very nicely mentioned about initiative of GPS seal to be integrated with Bangladesh, Nepal, and Bhutan. And I do believe that there are customs reforms initiatives that all four of them are talking about, and that meets the objective of our project of feasibility study, which we will be discussing tomorrow and subsequently. But this addresses the electronic seal or GPS seal side of the mutual agreement between these four countries. I do believe that Bangladesh, Bhutan, and Nepal are on board with India to see that we mutually recognize each other's electronic seal. This is my understanding. But when we talk about framework agreement and mutual recognition, not only on GPS seal, but on the documents acceptability, which are electronically signed or digitally signed, I do believe that Bangladesh, India, and Nepal has e-commerce regime or a legal framework based on UNCITRAL model law on e-commerce. My friend from UNCITRAL is sitting next to me. Nepal? No, Nepal is not there, but Bangladesh and India is on the board. But I do believe that Nepal has a legal framework which recognizes digital signature and electronic signature, that their systems are integrated. So why not to enter into a mutual recognition agreement of digital certificates of these four countries to be adopted, so that we are able to transact business electronically, and that the issues of the feasibility study is facilitated. So this is my suggestion to India and these three countries which share border with India. My third issue is on.
Hassan, sorry, but we are running out of time.
But only maybe 1 minute. Electronic bill of lading for Singapore, perhaps MLETR initiative. There is a project in UNCFACT on MLETR. Perhaps everyone would like to make use of it for implementation. And we have a white paper prepared for this to be taken up forward. The last point I want to mention that you mentioned about G20 in the presentation of Shantanu, that India has the presidency of G20 and we have included 2 items into it. One is mutual recognition, which is item 8 of our framework agreement, and the MLETR adoption as part of the G20. That may be of interest for everyone, and maybe perhaps I will discuss with you to take it forward further. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Tassin. Due to the time limitations, I think the questions to India is more applicable for tomorrow's presentation. So we'll take it tomorrow, if you don't mind. Just for the Republic of Korea to respond briefly.
I'm sorry, good. And can you the point there, can you give me the point of your question again? Sorry. You mean the possibility to apply this kind of electronic exchange of documents in other trade documents? Or?
No, at the moment, the electronic certificate of origin, all standardization has been done at UNCFACT, and a project which is taking reference implementation between Korea, Singapore, China, and Australia. So maybe you are part of your customs formation is part of it. So that may be of interest for you to take that standardization and logically implement it so that that gets adopted under the framework agreement, and we don't have to really duplicate the efforts of standardizing it. This is my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I think we can take it as a comment and move on. So
from Korean customs colleague. I mean, we saw that from the presentation made by our Singapore customs colleague that they are using blockchain technology method for country of origin certificate and also EBL. What kind of technology Korean customs is using? Just I want to.
Actually, the technology well adopted in our ECO system. It's not actually the fall under the 3 main the technologies such as blockchain or AI or something, but it's just I think a kind of traditional technology, but I think now before adopting this this kind of blockchain or other newly developed technologies, we think we put more importance on stability in this system. So we adopted the traditional, kind of you can tell legacy technologies, but we fortified the kind of technical stabilities in it. Yes.
okay, thank you very much. So we are past the timeline. Apologies for that, but thank you very much for all those speakers as well as all the questions that has been posed. Let me just give you a few house rules. So lunch will be provided outside of the meeting room. If you can't find it, just let me or Tengfei or any of us know. We will guide you. It is a light lunch, just a light snack type of lunch. So you can utilize that. Or if you prefer, you can go to the cafeteria, which is opposite to this meeting room. And the standing committee session will start at 1 p.m. sharp back in this room. We will be reorganizing the sittings. So if you can take your personal belongings, that would be better for us. Thank you very much and see you at 1 p.m. Thank you.